Hi, everyone. You've got Tiffany Yu here. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a Taiwanese American woman with below the shoulder length black hair. And I'm joining you from my place in Los Angeles, where I have a vintage Friends poster behind me. And this is actually an event that is happening in the Diversability Leadership Collective, which is our membership to Advanced Disability Leadership. And one of our members, Sean Gold, has a book coming out in September called The ABCs of Disabilities. And Kelley Coleman, who is also joining us, also had a book come out earlier this year. And I just looked up the name of it. It's Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child. So we were like, why don't we just host a book club event where we have authors come and talk about their books, authors who are also members. And then once we hopped on, we were like, oh, this could be an interesting podcast as well. So let's test this out. So Sean has actually sent me so I'm going to be reading for Sean. So let me go ahead and get started here. Hey guys, thank you all for coming to this event today, and I appreciate Diversability for letting me do this event. Thank you, Kelly, for agreeing to do it with me. I wanted this event to happen to share that my second self-published book, The ABCs of Disabilities, will be out on September 17th. Pre-orders begin this week. Since my membership for Diversability is expiring soon and I can't renew it right away, I figured it would be best to do this in August with you all. Before we continue, I will give a visual description of myself. I'm a Black man with a black beard and white tracheotomy breathing tube in my neck. And I am wearing a blue t-shirt. Kelly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. My name is Kelly Coleman. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white woman with black cat's eye glasses and reddish long hair, a bright pink sweater, and a black and white striped shirt. And I'm really excited to be in conversation with Sean again. We've spoken a number of times. Sean not only is an author, he also has his own series on YouTube called Crippled by Culture, where he focuses on many different aspects of disability and culture and how everything plays together. So I think it's no surprise for anyone who's seen that Sean is also an author and doing a lot of creative things.
I love that. All right, back to Sean. So I figured that we could do this more conversational style than an interview, so anyone can ask me and Kelly questions about our books. Since we just did a mixer with Jennifer Gassner a few weeks ago, this won't be about the publishing process too much, but we are going to discuss the contents inside our books and how they relate to each other, and obviously try to convince people to order both books. And I guess since we have Danielle here, Danielle, I don't know if you want to be on a podcast. Do you want to say hi and maybe what inspired you to want to attend this event? And actually, maybe you can chat a little bit more about kind of the library initiative that you're doing too.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Danielle. My camera is off, but my picture is there. I'm a white woman with brown hair. And I just wanted to attend today because I like hearing about people writing books because it's not even necessarily something that I feel like I would ever do. But I don't know. I just like hearing about it. And I got Sean's book in the mail and I loved it. So I was planning to make a video about it soon. But so yeah, so I just wanted to hear more about that. And then yeah, so my library initiative, I added Kelly and Sean's books to it because I think they're both like really important because they kind of speak to uh like similar kind of audiences because like the parents are the ones that buy the children's books unless you have someone with a good lemonade stand but yeah, because like my library, they were just like they didn't have anything on display for Disability Pride Month, and I normally go to other libraries in like cities, so I'm used to seeing them like have disability like pride displays. So that I just kind of was like, oh, and then they only had one book, so I wanted to. At first, I was gonna donate some, but then it felt kind of weird. Like I'm like, why should I have to donate when no one else has to donate? And then in my video, I was gonna list a bunch of books. I'm like, they have every series of this. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to start making fun of people's interests. You know what I mean? Just because someone likes this book and I think it's kind of foolish and not as important. Like, everyone has their own thing that they're looking for at the library. So that's why I feel like I wanted to make that thing where people know you can request books from your library because, we're funding the libraries if we live in the town. So so I just thought that was important. And yeah, and then I was glad to add Kelly and Sean's books to the list among some other good ones. So hopefully I'll be seeing some fresh books at my library soon, but we'll see.
I love that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I forgot to mention that I also have a book coming out. It's called The Anti-Ableist Manifesto. Comes out October 8th. It's going to be a Tiffany U national holiday if anyone else wants to join. Um, but I was looking online recently about, of course, pre-ordering is the best thing you can do if you have the means, but there are so many non-monetary ways that you can support authors as well. And one is requesting the title from your library, and another is just checking it out. If it is available, or putting a hold on it. So I even noticed that in my Libby app, I can go search for my book, which isn't out yet, and put like a notify me, which I think will signal to the author that, or signal to the library that there's interest in the book as well. So it feels like the library form of amplification, how we would ask people to amplify social media content. It's like library has its own way. And I did tell Danielle, and she's already done it. She's in touch with her local library. But if you search, request a title, and then enter the name of your local library or your city, you'll see instructions for how to do that for your local library. So with that, Kelly, and actually this is for Kelly, I apologize. So I actually think this is going to be Kelly and Sean, but actually I'd love Kelly to answer that question too. But maybe what if I ask the questions and then if both of you want to answer, we can do that. Does that work? Okay, Sean and Kelly giving me a nod. Okay, I would love to know what made you decide to write your book. So Kelly, how about you first?
Yes, and if Sean, you're comfortable, for the audience, Sean is typing for the conversation. So Sean, if you're comfortable with me going first, purely to give you the time to type, then I will go ahead and do that. But if you feel like knock it off, put that in the chat and I'm happy to send it over to you first anytime. So to start off, the reason I wrote my book, I'm a non-disabled parent of 2 children, one of whom has multiple disabilities. And there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of planning, and accessing the systems and the services and the supports is a full-time job. Caregiving for kids like my son who do have significant support needs is absolutely a full-time job. And I have my executive functioning, I can do the paperwork and the planning, and I also have been able to figure out so many of these systems. And I have a particular passion for narrowing this huge gap in access to information. And my goal with this book is really for all parents across all demographics to have the same access to information and resources, whether it's how to call your insurance company, what should I be thinking about for financial planning, I'm nervous about this specialist appointment, how do I be a good parent facilitator for my kid, all the things, and really maximize everything for my kid. And I wanted all parents to have that access to their information because all of our children deserve equal access to thrive.
Yeah, that's so important, Kelly. And I've been referring, I come across parents a lot in my work because there are kind of 2 categories of people who have my injury, which is called a brachial plexus injury, one of my arms is paralyzed. And one is medical malpractice during childbirth. So you have a lot of parents who have young kids who have brachial plexus injuries who are looking for support and figuring out how to navigate. So definitely excited about that. And then Sean responded about why he decided to write his book. He says, "My book is an alphabet book for children and adults with and without disabilities to teach about their disabled peers, family mentors, and friends in a digestible way. For the past 3 years, I've been working tirelessly on an alphabet book called The ABCs of Disabilities. Not disability, I've seen people mix that up, which is set to release on September 17th. It includes 26 terms from A to Z that parents, guardians, grandparents, and teachers can read to their children to help them learn how to understand and empathize with their friends in inclusive ways. I would love to see this book being shared everywhere, and I would definitely come to read to the students upon requests in schools, libraries, wherever. I wanted to write this book so that kids everywhere can get exposed to the disabled community as early as possible in an accessible and inclusive way. So excited for that. So I know, Sean, some of the advanced reader copies of your book have gone out so far. And Kelly, your book came out in March. So maybe we'll start with you, Kelly, about what has the response been? What have the reviews been so far to your book?
So I have been really just overwhelmed with gratitude as the response and the reviews have come in. Not only is the book selling well, but the reviews have been outstanding, especially from parents who are looking for answers. I got an email from a mom recently who said, I saved $3,500 from my insurance company and I'm holding a check and I'm emailing you. And I wouldn't have known how to appeal from my insurance company and pursue this without your book. So that was money well spent. It's been great. And some of the bigger organizations that are really getting behind my book, it's very exciting. And the opportunity to connect with so many parents. The thing that I was very aware of as I was writing this book as a non-disabled person, there are many experts featured throughout the book, many of whom are disabled themselves. And it was very meaningful to me and my great hope that disabled individuals would read this and say, okay, lady, you got this right. Well done. And the response really has been overwhelmingly positive, because I really have leaned on disabled leaders for so much of language and approach and even readability of the book. And a question that I often get, which segues into Sean, is so many people say, I don't have experience with disability. How do I teach my kids about disability when I don't have disabled people in my circle, in my family, in my friend group? To which I say, you actually do, but their disabilities might not be visible and they might not have revealed them to you, which is absolutely their business. But you do have disabled people in your life, and a book like Sean's, I love because first of all, it's really good. Second of all, it is a picture book, so it is super accessible that you can read to anyone. And I find that so often communication about disability to children is super earnest. And it's either like, isn't this person inspiring because they're a superhero because they're disabled? And I feel like it's not a superhero. He's an 11-year-old dude. And he's also not tragic. And it's not like, oh, this poor kid, he communicates with the device. Nah, he's good. So of the many great things about Sean's book, what I like best is that it is a great way to answer parents who have asked me, how do I bring this up with my kid? How do I talk about it? And it builds into Danielle's library initiative of when libraries and schools have books that are fun to read and not earnest and don't feel like eat your broccoli, but it's something that your kids are going to want to read because it is fun and it's not heavy-handed and it normalizes visible, not visible disabilities, accessibility, and it normalizes, it's fun, and it is such an easy way for parents and teachers to just build in disability.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that a couple takeaways there. I actually have a chapter in my book. It used to be called Advocate with Us, Not for Us. And it was really about how you don't need to be disabled to be a disability advocate. And while you were speaking, I actually just realized that we're going to do a podcast episode. So we'll dive deeper. We'll put a pin in that, because I would love to dive into that topic a little bit deeper and how we can better show up. And also at the same time, I actually don't interact with kids that much in my work, but I am working on a kids project that maybe by the time this goes live, it will be public, where I I hadn't really thought about how complicated and complex either some of the language that we use or the way we describe things, but how are we able to distill that narrative down um, into something that a child will understand that doesn't fall into the trope of tragedy or superhero. And um, and I think I did. I'm going to share this sentence. Actually, I'll get feedback from both of you. So I said, and I'll redact part of it, but it says, while some of these stories might inspire you, many of us with disabilities are wonderfully ordinary and human, not necessarily superheroes, inspirational, brave, tragic, or special. If you find yourself wanting to label someone with a disability that way, ask yourself if you would still describe them that way if you took disability out of the picture. In addition to being XYZ profession, we're also teachers, politicians, authors, bankers, and so much more. We exist in all spaces, and I hope you'll learn that disability is a part of the human experience and continue to break down barriers for the over 1 billion of us around the world. That was something I wrote recently, but I wrote it because as I was trying to find content that didn't fall into an inspirational trope, sometimes it had a little bit too, it had references to adult content, which is also an important topic too. I have another book that just came out called Dateable. But yeah, it was like, yeah. And actually I was surprised that I didn't find any content out there that was appropriate for kids that really broke down inspiration, exploitation in a way that children would understand it. But I digress. So the question was how the response has been to the book so far. And Sean says the response has been amazing. Kelly was actually the first to review it. And last week I put together a document of all the reviews and it is over 10 pages. It has been a great start. That's amazing. 10 pages of reviews. We might have an overachiever here, but also I just wanted to highlight just how supportive I think this group that we have at Diversability has been. You know, I like, Kelly, that you called it the Danielle Library Initiative. Danielle, maybe you might want to get a trademark for that, the DLI, the Danielle Library Initiative. But all right, let me continue here, which is a question for everyone. Which kind of touches on what we were talking about before about making sure that content was available and narratives that reflected and felt authentic to our own. But the question is, growing up, do you recall having any books that talked about disabilities or chronic illnesses? And maybe and we can actually open this up to Kelly and Danielle, and then I know Sean wants to share his screen, or I can share. So Kelly, do you recall any books about disabilities or chronic illnesses growing up?
The only thing that comes to mind is Helen Keller. And what I like about that story is that she absolutely became, we hear so much about her as a child and her evolution. She became a leader and she was very accomplished in her life. So I like that illustrates accomplishment and capability and all of that. But when that is the only story we're told, it feels a little like, okay, this is in this box and then we're done. And when I was growing up, disability wasn't talked about and it wasn't in our books. And when it's not, it's kind of secretly giving that message of, it's not that important to talk about. We don't really need these characters in here. And oh my goodness, that would have been really helpful.
Yeah, I can respond too. This is Tiffany. I think I didn't seek it out. I don't know, but it also kind of reminds me, as we record this, the Paris Paralympics are happening next week, and someone I follow on social media is on the Canadian Paralympic team, and her the station that would have showed the Paralympics are not broadcasting any of it. So her family and friends who aren't going to be there aren't going to be able to see it. And I bring that up because I actually feel like, and I posted about this on Threads, that like the way ableism shows up the worst for disabled people is through not even being thought about in the first place, right? Even to Danielle's point, it's having this month and not even having any visibility. And then even if we don't have a display during Disability Pride Month, it's not even having the books by disabled authors or that touch on disability themes. So, yeah, exclusion, I believe, is actually the microaggression that disabled people experience the most. So Sean has a response here. Sean, would you like me to read your response or share the screen first, or both at the same time? Actually, let's see what this PDF is. Danielle, what about for you?
Sure. Yeah, I don't remember any. And I did seek them out when I was like a little bit older, but they were always in memoir form, and it was kind of hard to find like even fiction or anything like that. Like, and so I did like and like for children's books, I would say the only time I remember it was, and I do think these are good. But and hopefully they're more becoming popular as like child life becomes more of a thing in children's hospitals. But I was 16 when I had to get a G-tube, and that was like the only time I saw a kids book because they had kids books about it. So I didn't need a kids book about it since I was 16, but I just thought it was good for kids to have because you know it's a lot to get like a foreign like piece of medical equipment that's like attached to you. So I know they have a lot of more like issues with kids. And I mean, not to say it was easy for me either, but that was like the only time I remember seeing like something so specific. And it was kind of funny because they were like mentioning it like, oh, this could be like read to your children's class. And it was just funny because yeah, disability wasn't like talked about like ever, like going through school. Like, and I was the only one in my school disabled, so it was always kind of weird for me. So I didn't even like connect with like Helen Keller as like a disability story. It was just like honestly, I like because I had a piece of content that I was gonna make about this and it kind of got postponed a bit. Because then it ended up almost becoming a series, even though it started with how the internet has kind of made jokes about how Helen Keller is like not even a real person because they like believe it was like impossible for someone to be deaf and blind. And then I was like reflecting back, I'm like, I'm pretty sure we were taught in school as if she was the only one that ever existed that was deaf and blind. So it was like even the way we were taught about it, I think was like problematic. So yeah, so that's a long rambled way of explaining my experiences with books and representation.
Well, that's the beauty of the podcast. It's the podcast form in itself is the long ramble. But I actually got asked a question recently, I think, to Danielle's point around how I got asked for book recommendations for fiction disability books. And I hadn't heard the question clearly, so I was like, oh, my book's coming out, and Alice Wong's Disability Visit, and she was like, oh, fiction. And to be totally transparent, I personally don't read a lot of fiction book, but in my research, there are a couple initiatives. One is called Disability and Kid Lit. But that blog actually hasn't been updated in a couple of years, but still good resources. And then there is a hashtag called Own Voices, OWN Voices. And these are reviews that you have to be living with the same condition as the protagonist or characters in the book in order to review it. All of that said, Nico Meyering, who is actually a voracious reader, actually did an event recently in the DLC, in our book club event. I guess this is the plus side of attending all the DLC events, about some young fiction books that have disabled characters in them recently. So I'll see if I can pull up some of those names and put them into the notes. But we had a nice little ramble there. So I'm reminding myself of what the question was, which is growing up, do you recall having any books that talked about disabilities or chronic illnesses? And I'm going to read Sean's answer, and then I'm going to share my screen, which actually looks like it's a preview of Sean's book. So let me go ahead and read Sean's answer. So Sean says, I don't recall books at all, but I wasn't a fan of reading. I'm still not a reader, I'm a writer. I think this book has taught me that my younger self needed a book like this in order to heal that part of my childhood. So similar to what I explained a few questions ago. I reflected on how my friendships would have been even better than what they were if kids weren't told to just look away. I think I learned how much I needed this book as a kid myself. Growing up, I didn't see a lot of representation in disability when it came to media. I'm talking about books, movies, TV shows, gaming, and other entertainment. I only knew about Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, who are both Black disabled musicians. So my view on disability representation was limited. There was also a boy who was a wheelchair user on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but that was it. This book is a gift to my younger self to finally have a story to relate to. It's beautiful. I have a saying, I think I took it from Wes Hamilton. It used to be his Instagram bio, but it says, being the representation I couldn't find. And I feel like a lot of us who are trying to do things in the world are doing them because we didn't see examples of ourselves. So right now I have pulled up, Sean, is this a digital copy of your book? Okay, I'm getting a nod, yes. Let me see if I can take away maybe this. Oh, there we go. Is there anything in particular you wanted us to say about the book? Let me check out the notes real quick.
And should we offer a visual description of the cover that's showing right now?
Yes. Okay, so we're going to show off the book a little bit and I can go ahead and describe it. And then we can ask for folks' thoughts and opinions on it afterward. That seem about right? Okay, I'm getting the nods. I have too many windows open. Let me see if I can figure out. This is fun. Little. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Overall thoughts and opinions. Okay, here we go. And then Kelly, do you want to do the description?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It looks like it has left my screen, but I can.
But you know what? It has left my screen too. Here, give me 1 second. This is
Excellent.
we
And
have
if
some.
anyone listening would like to Google the ABCs of Disabilities by Sean Gold, S-E-A-N Gold, you will pull it up quickly. It is a cream colored cover, and in large letters, it says A in yellow, B in red, C in purple, ABCs of Disabilities, which is in a turquoise banner. So ABCs of Disabilities, and the illustration on the front surrounding the letters. There are children who appear to be elementary school age, and the children appear to be diverse in terms of both ability and in terms of race. There are children with dark toned skin, with light toned skin, and in between there is an orange basketball, there are colorful blocks, there is a brown tree with green leaves, and the children, who one would assume from the title, are disabled. Some of the disabilities are visible. For example, a boy with a walker mobility device, another boy with a tracheotomy, and there's a boy with glasses. Glasses are for accessibility, and many of us have those. And the other kids, if they are in fact disabled, it's not necessarily visible. I see a hearing device, hearing aid on one of the girls' ears, and the entire book is illustrated with similar illustrations and bright colors throughout the book.
And then at the top, there is a quote from fellow DLC member, Mary Fashik, and it says, "A beautifully crafted and thoughtfully illustrated book that introduces young readers to the diverse world of disabilities." Mary Fashik, who also has a book, I think it comes out this month, called Adventurous Adeline and Upgrade Accessibility. This is beautiful. The illustrations are really beautiful. And then the next slide says the ABCs of disabilities. This time the people are not in view. Sean, I don't know. Do you want us to go through the book? I feel like we're giving away all of the juice. Oh, okay. Sean clarified that actually one of the characters on the front is a character with Down syndrome.
Oh, thank you, Sean.
Wait, I didn't see the response. Did you want us to flip through the pages, Sean? Oh, some pages. Okay. Why don't we just do a couple and then see what people think? Well, first of all, I'm loving the illustrations. So here we go. I'll just read the first. We'll just do the first 2 pages, and then if it piques your interest to go check out B through Z. So the first page is on like a light blue, a very light blue / green background, and it has an illustration of a Black man with a tracheotomy and a red shirt waving. And it says, "Hi, I'm Sean. Hi, my name is Sean, and I am the author of this book. I was born with a disability, and lots of people, both kids and adults, ask me questions about what it's like. Maybe you have questions too. So I wrote this book to answer some of those questions. Perhaps you have a disability, or maybe you don't, but you want to learn about them. Either way, this book is for you from A to Z." And then Sean is waving, and it looks like there's a speech bubble coming out with a big question mark on it, and it says, "Where is Sean?" Oh, and it says there are 3 more illustrations of me as a child inside this book. See if you can find them all. The answers are at the back of this book. So it's a little cute scavenger hunt. I love that. And then the first page, as we start to go into the alphabet A, is on kind of like a light green background, and it has an illustration of a playground of someone, a girl with glasses sitting on a swing, looking like she's having the best time of her life. I feel like I want that to be my avatar. And then 2 people, I forget what that's called. It's not a merry-go-round, but it's a wheelchair user on this thing in the playground that spins. Kelly, do you know what it is? This is how you know
Racking my
my
brain.
audience
I should
is not
know,
kids.
right? I'm the
Um,
parents, and I'm like, oh, those things make me barf. I don't remember what they're called.
I know the things that give you a headache afterward. But there's a wheelchair user on it, and a boy wheelchair user with red hair on it, and he's being spun around by a girl wearing a ponytail. And it says A, and A is in a very large letter. It says A is for accessibility. Some kids may speak, hear, see, or move one way. Others may speak, hear, see, or move another way. That's why accessibility is important. So as many kids as possible can easily enjoy the same places and activities. Kids with disabilities may need extra tools to do the tasks or another person to help out. But this way, everyone can take part in having fun. I love that. I just wanted to see the illustrations. And I know Sean made a joke we did an author's mixer that finding the right illustrator and hiring them is really a respectable, it's a lot, but this looks so fun. I guess one question I have for you, Sean, is how did you determine, there are so many, because even for A, I could have thought of like accommodations or even ally or advocate. There are so many different letters. So curious how you thought of what word was going to be associated with each letter. And while we wait for Sean's response there, oh, he said I is my favorite illustration. Okay, maybe we have to go check out I then.
And as you're scrolling to that, I wanted to add this book is tremendously joyful, and the kids in it are, as you mentioned, at the playground, having the time of their lives, out walking the dog, doing things and experiencing joy, which I believe is what Jay is for in this book. And I've had the conversation with so many other parents of disabled children that we don't just need this is a hard thing and kids can overcome, like overcome is a tricky word too. We need joy, and we need to see disabled children being joyful in their day-to-day lives. And that's also why this is such a great teaching tool, because it isn't just saying the kid in your class who has these learning disabilities is going to experience a lot of struggle. It's going to say, this kid in your class loves the swings just like you. And it builds in the piece of joy that is something that connects us all in such a necessary way.
Mm. I'm just catching up on the chat here. Sean says, isn't it a merry-go-round? I feel like I'm gonna ask ChatGPT later, because I feel like the merry-go-round is where you sit on the horses and there's a pole and it plays music and goes around. But maybe it's also okay. Let's take a look at I. And then, every single time I go full screen, I just feel like I have difficulties, but let's try this out. Can you see the book?
Mhm.
I'm just like smiling to myself because I have three windows open of Sean's book because they just disappear into the abyss every time I try to share my screen. Okay, so let's take a look at I. And then I love that conversation, Kelly, that you brought up of Jay. All right, here's I. So we have a like a brown-skinned kid in a wheelchair, boy in a wheelchair with a green shirt. Kind of dreaming. He has like dream clouds above him, and he's in a it looks like he's an astronaut and he's still in his chair. I love that. It's so cute. Says I is for imagination. Blast off into space using your imagination. If you're non-disabled, you might imagine flying a spaceship in a regular command chair. A disabled child might imagine flying their spaceship in a command wheelchair. What about you? What do you imagine? So cute. I will say these illustrations are bringing me a lot of joy. And then as Kelly mentioned, J is for joy. This is on a light purple background of what looks like a black blind girl who is wearing sunglasses, and she has a walking stick as well as a guide dog on a purple harness. And it says, J is for joy. Hooray for the feeling of joy. Some kids feel joy when they get good grades. Some feel joy when they do things on their own, like getting dressed or walking their dog. Some feel joy when they're in the park with their friends on a sunny day. Every kid deserves to feel happiness. I love that. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I would actually love to use that as a segue. I know, Sean, I had asked you how you had determined each letter, and you said each word to associate with each letter, and you said, oh, Danielle, okay, we're still on the merry-go-round. Danielle said she saw like 5 answers when she Googled it, and maybe it's regional. If we can figure it out, we will put it in the show notes. And I had asked Sean how he determined what word was going to be associated with each letter. So he said yes. So my initial thought was A is for autism, C is for cerebral palsy, etc. But for the age group, my developmental editor said it was too complex for them. And then we rewrote the entire book with this idea. I like that. And on the topic of J for joy, I think we can maybe ask everyone what kind of is bringing you joy these days. But I will say in my own advocacy journey, I have even that line, every kid deserves happiness, even adults, everybody. I have been really exploring what my advocacy looks like when I center joy. And I feel like, I've actually been going through my Instagram content over the last couple of years. And a couple of years ago, I would write these long captions about kind of what was going on in my life. Like vulnerability is something I take a lot of pride in, and that's how I wanted to lead. But I've also learned that I want to share more stories from a scar rather than a wound. So sometimes now I wait until the hard thing has happened and I'm on the other side of it. Because I do believe if you are in your valleys, that's not the end. That's not where your story ends. But I noticed that more of my content these days is kind of being in community with being in community with disabled folks. And I have this unofficial series. I don't even know why I called it a series, but I should say this month's Disabled Joy, or like Disabled Joy at VidCon, or like Disabled Joy at the Grammys. And just like being in community with people who are doing cool stuff. What about for you, Kelly? What's bringing you joy?
These last 2 weeks, what's bringing me so much joy is that my boys started school again. And fortunately, I have kids who enjoy school. And in particular, for our younger son, Aaron, who, as I mentioned, has multiple disabilities, his teacher this year is one who he has known and has talked to over the years at all of the school drop-offs in the morning. And so coming into her classroom, she was already adept with communicating with him on his AAC. He spends his days split between a general education classroom and a special education classroom, which is a great fit for him. And he is surrounded by AAC users and also individuals who are speaking and are so adept with AAC. And he is so thrilled and just bubbling over with joy that he is surrounded by people who know how to communicate with him.
I love that. Back to school. A lot of my parent friends over the summer, and yeah, Kelly, I know you took some time off over the summer too, probably reeling off of book stuff, but then also being having the kids out of school as well.
Yes, I chose for much of the summer to put an auto reply on my email, say I'm still working, but I am being away from my computer as much as possible in favor of just being a mom and enjoying my kids. And I think too often parents of disabled children feel that they have to be on duty and doing the therapies and making the progress and meeting the goals all the time. And it's very easy to miss out on the joy of, going to the beach with your kid or spending an hour at the grocery store because they love the grocery store. And the joy piece, it just cannot be undervalued. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I have a friend, her name is Joy, and sometimes I do think about like if people just expect that you will be joyful all the time. And there's a space for all emotions. I haven't seen Inside Out 2 yet, but it's on my list. Danielle, what about for you? What is bringing you joy these days? And then Sean will close out that question with you.
Sure, I highly recommend Inside Out too. I loved it. So bringing me joy. Well, I just got back from a cruise, so I had a lot of fun on that. And well, it was good because even though they do ask for it, but the like when you go on a cruise, they give like ask for feedback. Because I've done some more like adaptive like recreational stuff this summer. Like that was always on my to-do list. Like I tried sailing, and I liked it a lot. And I was actually impressed. Like I don't know how widespread this is, but they actually have like a sailboat that has like a sip. Um, I forget what it's called, but you know what I mean? Like where people can move like a wheelchair with like the white sip part. Anyway, they can do that with a sailboat, which was really cool. And so it's I'm glad that I kind of have this more of like this hope for the younger generation that these options will be available for them, because I think it was good though, almost in a way that I kind of had this obsession with trying to find a hobby when I was younger because I've kept it going. And then like I see people like I know retiring and they're like they don't know what to do. And I'm like, there's literally a million things you can do. And so yeah, so that's been bringing me joy. But back to the cruise ship. So I did give them the feedback that they could have made some of their activities more adaptive. I'm like, it's really not that hard. But so I was glad that I kind of had the experiences where I could be like, oh, you can just do X, Y, and Z. And the hard part is you design the ship accessibly, and then you can just make these activities adaptive easily. So we'll see if they take the feedback. But I was just glad I had the perspective that it exists.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. We had a fun conversation. Some of our DLC members really love cruises, and I actually don't think I've been on a cruise. It has to be almost 30 years the last time I was on a cruise. So maybe we'll do a DLC outing uh, to experience the cruise. Sean says, I have also seen a celebrity as starting a foundation to assist adults with disabilities, and that brings me joy because it finally puts disabled adults in the spotlight. Unfortunately, he still says special needs, but it's something. But outside of work, I love being with friends and going with family to the casino. Ooh, to the casino. What are you doing at the casino? Are you playing blackjack or poker? I feel like those spaces are not for me because then I'm like, oh, I'm up now. Like maybe does this next one, and then it doesn't work out. Sean says both, all of the above, all of the above. All right, and to close us out, I think so Kelly, this is a question for Kelly. You had mentioned the idea of bundling your and Sean's books together when you reviewed his book. Have you thought about that more?
That is definitely something I've thought about as I'm moving forward. I'm so passionate about elevating the voices that I didn't have growing up to bring us full circle, and books about disability and books about and featuring disability by people of color are much too hard to come by. And as I've talked with Tiffany about her book, The Anti-Ableist Manifesto, if, our 3 books, if parents had those are tools for chipping away at their own ableism, figuring out how to do all of their stuff, talking with their children and others about disability. And for me, what's exciting about that is my great hope is that that leads to building in and normalizing our children's own disabilities in themselves and disabilities in siblings. And my great hope is figuring out a way to really get these books together into the hands of parents, into the hands of everybody, but parents are my particular audience. Because I really think if the parents can recognize and work on their own bias and can be very comfortable with disability, hopefully we can build in that pride and normalcy into our children.
Yeah, I think one thing I like about each of our books who are on here is that I feel like you would get introduced to our book at a different stage of your life. So, and then Sean asked, can we bundle our books on Amazon? We need to figure out how. I'm not quite sure how that works. I was joking to Kelly, I think during our authors mixture, that I'm currently in a stage of my author journey where I have no idea what's going on. But yeah, I will share that one of the early reviews I've gotten on my book is that people feel is that the reader felt really hopeful after reading the book because she actually did believe that creating a disability inclusive world is possible. So maybe I'll close with one other question, and then so my last question is going to be how can we support you? And I know Sean has provided some things around writing reviews. But I guess my question for both of you is, and also Danielle is mentioned in the book a couple of times. Thank you, Danielle. And so is Kelly. Sean, I don't think you submitted by the deadline, but I also The deadline was very tight. So whoever, and I think I texted Kelly and I was like, can you contribute? But we'll go into the behind the scenes a little bit later on that. What was I going to say? Oh, how do you want readers to feel after they read your book? Kelly, let's start with you.
Great. I will jump in. I want readers to feel like they understand what needs to be done and they feel empowered to do it. And by that, I mean all the boring, the paperwork, the figuring out, the planning, all the stuff that you don't have a choice to do, but that no one actually knows how to do. The book is written very conversationally. I want people to actually understand and use the information to make their lives easier and to better support their kids.
I love that. And then I know your book has been out for a couple of months. What would be, is there anything you want our listeners to know about how they can support you and the book?
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, as Danielle mentioned, books like this need to be available for free. The people who need these books most, and especially a book of like how to do all this stuff, who needs it most are often the people who can't afford to buy the book. And if this was in every library, it changes lives. So request the book from your local library. Of course, follow me. My website is the easiest place to find me, kellycoleman.com. That's Kelley Coleman. My book, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child, Your Guide to the Essential Systems, Services, and Supports, is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookseller. And really spread the word because somebody is really sick of calling their insurance company and being told no when they actually should be told yes.
And I love that you mentioned that ROI that you buy Kelly's book, which is $20.
I think on Amazon it's on sale for 17 something right now. But yeah, 20.
And you can save $3,500. There's
yes. That's pretty good investment.
That is an amazing ROI. All right, we'll close it out with Sean. I had asked how you want people to feel after reading your book. And Sean said, I want kids to be able to ask questions and feel comfortable talking to their peers with disabilities. Don't tell them to look away. And even to that point, I actually just saw this amazing reel on Instagram around like how to navigate with kids. And the thing the woman said was the first first thing you can do is reaffirm the kid. Like, yes, he has a tracheotomy, or yes, they're in a wheelchair, rather than telling them to look away. And then the other question was, how can we best support you as an author on your book journey, Sean? We know the book is coming out. Sean says, please post your reviews for our books on our Goodreads and Amazon book pages. I will also put an asterisk in there that you can copy paste the same review on both platforms. I don't know if that's an insider thing. And then Sean says, I'd love to have reviews on my book on Amazon on September 17th to help my book go high in the algorithm on release day. Please share your emails with me to get reminded the morning it releases. So Sean, for the people who are listening in, if they don't have access to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch so they can share their email so they can get that notification? And the email is authorseangold@gmail.com, author, AUTHORSEANGOLD@gmail.com. And with that, we are at the top of the hour. We had a fun podcast here on this impromptu episode of Diversability Amplified. But this is also kind of like some of the conversations we have within the DLC, just more informal and not having to be on a podcast. But with that, this is Tiffany Yu. I'm your informal host for this. And I hope you enjoyed listening. And we have a lot of other episodes that you can listen to and more coming up as well. So thank you so much, everyone.